The First 100 Years of Oak Grove Baptist Church by Louise Sumner Thomas, continued. Church officers and committees for 1974 and 1975. Moderator, the pastor. Assistant moderator, chairman of deacons. Clerk, Thomas H. Sumner. Treasurer, Douglas H. Thomas. Sunday School Director, James W. Thomas. Training School Director, Carl Ned Davies. WMU Director, Pauline Crump. Brotherhood Director, Cecil Thomas. Purchasing Secretary, William Robert Flood. Executive Board Member, William Robert Flood. Historian, Louise Sumner Thomas. Trustees, Boyce Brayboy. Charles E. Thomas, Kenneth Oakley. Organist, Martha Davis. Pianist, Jan Oakley. Song leader, George Major. Music Committee, Andrew Thomas, James Lancaster, Tom Vinson. Nursery Committee, Loretta Fuller, Chairman, Jan Oakley, Patty Curlin, Martha Lassiter, and Jane Harper. House Cleaning Committee, Nell Vinson, Julia Lancaster, and Brenda Southwick. Entertainment Committee, Mary and John Bridges, Betty and Pink Guy Jr., Pauline and James Thomas, Nella and Thomas H. Gentry, and Ann and George Major. Building and Grounds Committee, Berwick Downs, Sam Armstrong, Matt Cunningham, Marcia Gray, James Thomas, Andrew Thomas. Centennial Committee, Louise Sumner Thomas, Louise Thomas Thomas, Tom Vinson, Nella Gentry, William Robert Flood. Budget Committee, Tom Vinson Chairman, Dale Freeman Jr., William Fuller, Joe Oakley, and Charles E. Thomas. Sunday School Workers and Assistants for 1974 and 1975. Sunday School Secretary, Pauline Thomas. Adult Department, Debbie E. Bill Johnson and Thomas H. Gentry. Youth Department, Joy Lancaster and Marie Flood. Elementary Department, Debbie A. Roberts and Diane Thomas. Extended Service, Diane Thomas and Rayanne Davis. Nursery, Susan M. Taylor and Juanita Guard. Preschool, ages 3 to 5, Pauline Herndon and Betty Oakley. Grades 1 and 2, Mildred Grissom and Lois Johnson. Grades 3 and 4, Lois Light and Merle Downs. Grades 5 and 6 boys, George King. Grades 5 and 6 girls, Murray Thomas and Brenda Southwick. Grades 7 to 10 boys, O.C. Herndon and Noble Curley. Grades 7 to 10 girls, Marie Flood and Jackie Oakley. Grades 11 and up boys, Lacey Geyer and Ned Davis. Grades 11 and up girls, Martha Davis. Young adult, Rex Holland and Kenneth Oakley. Women, number 1, Ann King, Nell Vinson, and Lily Mae Cunningham. Women, number 2, Rose Freeman and Lenora Crump. Women, number 3, Louise Sumner Thomas and Mally Vinson. Men, number 1, Dale Freeman and Thomas H. Gentry. Men, number 2, Malcolm Light. Church Training Workers, 1974 to 75. Secretary, Marcia Gray. Preschool, Rayanne Davis and Debbie A. Roberts. Grades 1 through 4, Letitia Hughes and Betty Geyer. Grades 5 and 6, Theta Thomas. Grades 7 and up, Pauline Thomas and Brother Lassiter. Youth, Martha Davis. Baptist Leaders, 1974 and 75. Baptist Women, Martha Lassiter. ACT Team, Martha Davis and Carol Thomas. GAs, Loretta Fuller, Pauline Thomas, Betty Geyer. Mission Friends, Diane Thomas. Baptist Men Director, Cecil Thomas. Baptist Men President, Malcolm Light. RA Counselor, Joe Oakley. Active Teams, George King. Vacation Bible School. In the 1940s, Brother Spar led in our first Vacation Bible School. As there was no other rural Vacation Bible School near, children came from neighboring communities, both Baptist and Methodist. Vacation Bible School in those days was a 2-week school. On graduation night, there was a real display of Bible knowledge and skill. Early workers were Nella T. Gentry, Louise T. Thomas, Louise S. Thomas, Agnes S. Wilburn, Bertie Thomas, and Letitia Hughes. Vacation Bible School has continued as an annual summer event, but it has changed to a one-week school. Graduation night has become a time for viewing slides showing the children engaging in various activities. Some workers in more recent years have been Nell Vinson, Lily Mae Cunningham, Rose Freeman, Virginia Nesbitt, Ann King, Frida Sumner, Janie Harper, Betty Geyer, Betty Oakley, Mary Julia Furman, Beta Thomas, Lois Geyer, Dorothy Bridges, Rosemary Dixon, Diane Thomas, Louise T. Thomas, Richard Thomas, and James Flood. Bus. Oak Grove's church bus was used the first time when Ned Davis drove it to carry members to Barkley Lake for the outdoor baptizing on July the 16th, 1972. Perhaps the merriest groups to ride in the church bus are those who make the annual summer trip to Nashville with our pastor, Brother Lassiter, to spend a day of fun at Opryland, USA. Church weddings. On December the 23rd, 1875, Peachy Thomas, a charter member, and John R. Mills were married in Oak Grove Church, this being the first of numerous weddings to be performed in the church. Some other couples who were married here are Lucille Vinson and Joe Futrell, September the 7th, 1919, Laverne Lancaster and Alton Mitchell, June the 17th, 1956, Shelvia Curling and Carl T. Bridges, June the 21st, 1958, Dorothy Nell Bridges and Albert Moore, June the 4th, 1960, Joyce Poole and Bruce Thomas, June the 12th, 1960, Bernice Brayboy and Jessie Reed Brown, September 6, 1961, Florence Flood and Ronald Drennan, May the 30th, 1964, Deanna Furman and James Turner, May the 21st, 1964, Clara Gentry and Ernest Lawrence, May the 7th, 1966, Jane Wyman and Philip S. Connor, December the 4th, 1966, Sharon Curlin and Craig Stevens, June the 18th, 1967, Betty Lawson and Jerry S. Bridges, November the 15th, 1969, Harriet Nesbitt and Jackie Clark, June the 28th, 1969, Marie Sadler and William Robert Flood, September 26, 1969, Jan Lancaster and Joe Wayne Oakley, June the 12th, 1971, Patty King and Tommy Ladd, August the 7th, 1971, Linda McGraw and Donald Keller, March the 31st, 1972, Joy Allen and Lindsay Champion, July the 8th, 1972, Marcia Gray and Stephen Rutland, August the 19th, 1972, Paulette McGraw and Bob Harris, November 25th, 1972, Patricia Reynolds and Michael Curling, December the 10th, 1972, Jane Sumner and Dale Harper, December the 29th, 1972, Linda Cunningham and Millard Fowler Jr., June the 9th, 1973, Beverly Bridges and Charles R. Powell, September the 1st, 1973. This was the first couple to be married in the new auditorium. Tana Herndon and Kenneth Taylor, September the 21st, 1973. Susan Maxwell and Danny Taylor, August the 2nd, 1974. Deborah Armstrong and Hugh Roberts Jr., August the 10th, 1974. Funerals. Oak Grove Church has witnessed much happiness of various kinds. It has also been a place of sadness as numerous funerals have been conducted here. Some funerals here were for Starkey Thomas, September the 15th, 1881, James Garnett Thomas, August the 5th, 1920. He was killed in Germany, January the 1st, 1919. This was a military funeral. Kathleen Thomas, July the 26th, 1922, Jim J. Thomas, July 1941, Hugh Delbert Buddy Thomas, November 1944, Mary Thomas Flood, January 22nd, 1946, Eudora Thomas, February 3rd, 1946, Otis H. Francis, December 29th, 1948, Eldo Boyd Hughes, April 1951, Luther Lee Luke Hughes, January 1954, Pearl Thomas Hughes, April 1953, Gertie Thomas Mize, November 1957, W.R. Bob Thomas, April 1958, Mason Hughes, 1959, Hattie Ricks Thomas, July 13, 1962. Recent memorial gifts to Oak Grove Baptist Church. 4 brass offering plates were presented by Thomas Hughes Gentry and his sisters, Rachel E. Rath, Clara Lawrence, and Mary Jo Whitmer, in memory of their grandparents, Mason and Pearl Thomas Hughes and Lily Jefferson Gentry. A church guest register in memory of Philip S. Connor's grandmother, Lily Thomas Sumner, was presented by Jane Wyman Connor's relatives, the Wyman, Smith, and Burgess families. 25 1975 edition Baptist hymnals were given in memory of their parents, Steve Floyd and Lily Thomas Sumner, by Louise Sumner Thomas and Agnes Sumner Wilburn. Brother Lassiter is presenting 10 hymnals in memory of his parents. Some other members who are planning to give hymnals in memory of their loved ones are Matt Thomas, Debbie A. Roberts, Vernon and Virginia Anderson, Edna Flood, Veda Thomas, Aubrey and Julia Lancaster, Kent Geyer Jr. family, John R. and Gertrude Flood, Lacey Geyer family, Carter and Cicero Mitchell, Amos Geyer family, and Ned Davis family. Other members will also give memorial hymnals. Present connections with the past. Some children have a father and grandfather who are deacons. Rose Bridges Freeman's children, Susan, Carla, Dale III, and Smith, are descendants of 6 generations of Oak Grove deacons. Dale Freeman Jr., Carl Bridges, Smith Thomas, John S. Thomas, William B. Thomas, and Starkey Thomas. Tom Vincent's sons, Carrie, Nathan, Forrest, and Stanley, are also descendants of 6 generations of Oak Grove deacons. Tom Vincent, Carrie T. Vincent, Jesse M. Vincent, John S. Thomas, William B. Thomas, and Starkey Thomas. Many present-day youngsters are descendants of 3 or 4 Oak Grove Charter members. Some present-day youngsters are descendants of 5 Oak Grove Charter members, as is Philip S. Connor's daughter, Carol Lynn Connor. Carol is a descendant of Starkey and Mary Bridges Thomas, Starkey A. Thomas, Edmund and Elizabeth Outland Lancaster. Janie Sumner Harper's children, Anita and Thomas, are descendants of 6 Oak Grove Charter members, Starkey and Mary Bridges Thomas, William B. Thomas, Starkey A. Thomas, Edmund and Elizabeth Outland Lancaster. Thomas Dale Harper was the youngest person at Oak Grove church services on April the 20th, 1975, and on Mother's Day, 1975. Andrew and Carol Bridges Thomas's children, Deborah, Stephen, and Andrea, are descendants of 7 charter members, Starkey and Mary Bridges Thomas, William B. Thomas, John S. Thomas, Emily A. Thomas, W.A. and Margaret Thomas Lawrence. Ned Davis's children, Rayanne and Kenneth, are descendants of the first Oak Grove clerk, James J. Thomas and Mary Cunningham Thomas. Liza Dale Hughes Gentry's granddaughter, Clara Beth Lawrence, is a descendant of Stanley Thomas, Humphrey Lawrence, and Mason Hughes, who each gave land to Oak Grove. Ruth Flood Robinson's children, Pamela, Patricia, Kenneth, Brenda, and Stanley, are descendants of Stanley Thomas, Humphrey Lawrence, Mildred and Amos Flood, who gave land to Oak Grove. Descendants of Oak Grove charter members are now located in many different states and in several foreign countries. Cecil Thomas's son, Dr. Bill Clark Thomas, and his wife Ruth are missionaries in Malaysia. He is president of the Baptist Seminary there, and she teaches music. Bill and Ruth were appointed by the Southern Baptist Foreign Mission Board in June 1963. Dr. Thomas and their children Dorothy, Charles, Cecilia, and Deborah are descendants of charter members Starkey and Mary Bridges Thomas and James J. and Mary Cunningham Thomas. Discipline. In the early years, the church was much concerned with members living the Christian life and attempted to maintain strict discipline. Dancing, conducting oneself in a manner unbecoming to a Christian, intoxication, profanity, failure to control one's temper, etc., met with strong disapproval and was firmly dealt with. If the member expressed regret and a desire to do better, he was promptly assured of the forgiveness, concern, and prayers of the church. However, if the offender refused to repent after several calls by a discipline committee, and after a period of time, he or she was removed from membership. Sometimes committees were appointed to call on habitual non-attenders. Church and school. Oak Grove Church and nearby Geyer School and later Oak Grove School maintained a cooperating relationship. The church had services in the school before the church building was completed. The first cistern the church built was for the use of the church and the school. Sometimes subscription schools were taught in the church. When the church bought larger, more ornate kerosene lamps, the old ones were given to the school. When new pews were bought, some of the handmade ones were given to the school. When Oak Grove was consolidated with Cadiz Graded School in 1953, the community-owned school furniture was moved to the church. This included the old square handmade table that was originally used for a teacher's desk. Now with shortened leg, this is used in the nursery. The bookcase that was bought about 1910 when Malcolm Light's Aunt Maud Crook was teacher is now used in the nursery. The homemade teacher's desk that was made in the 1920s is now used in the church office. Finances. The early church never seemed to have much money. For any expense, a committee was appointed to solicit funds. They also handled all the money with care and caution. Everything the church paid for was first voted on by the church, and a committee of at least 2 was appointed to make the purchase, whether it was a lamp, chimney, and wicks, brooms, 25 bushels of coal, or whatever. In 1889, the pastor's salary was $150 a year. In 1911, his salary was $200 a year. In 1922, it was $300 a year. In 1944, it was $300 a year. In 1956, the pastor's salary was $2,400 a year, and in 1974, the pastor's salary was $8,400 a year. In 1903, the janitor's salary was $6 a year. In 1940, it was raised to $45 a year. In 1947, $100 a year, and in 1974, the janitor's salary was $1,200 a year. The total budget for 1974 was $25,000. Since 1933, the church treasurer has had in his care all Sunday school and church offerings and has been responsible for paying all bills. Prayer meeting. Oak Grove weekly prayer meetings began in the late 1940s when Brother Spar came to be assistant pastor. We had prayer meeting each Thursday night. Brother Spar made this a combination prayer and study meeting. Family night. Since 1956, Oak Grove has observed family night one Wednesday night each month. WMU, Brotherhood, and their various auxiliary organizations meet at that time. BYPU. In the 1930s, Louise Sumner and her mother, Lily Sumner, with the cooperation of other interested members, led in organizing a BYPU, Baptist Young People's Union. Like Sunday school, it sometimes closed during the winter months in the earlier days. This organization has undergone several name changes: BYPU, BTU, and TU, and now church training. Also, with time, organization and methods have changed. At first, all ages met together. It provided a church-wide program for Sunday night church service, which served for both instruction and training. Before standard literature was ordered, Lily Sumner planned the programs. BYPU members were invited to present a program at Rock Front to demonstrate what a BYPU was and to help them organize. The directors from 1953 to the present are Lawrence Sumner, Thomas H. Gentry, Alton Hughes, James Lancaster, Ned Davies, Rose Bridges Maxwell, Douglas H. Thomas, Berwick Downs, William R. Flood, Lily Mae Cunningham, George King, and Carl Ned Davis. The radio ministry. When radio station WKDZ opened in 1966, Oak Grove participated with Little River Association in sponsoring regular programs on the air. Oak Grove's first time on the air was Wednesday, April the 27th, 1966 at 9:30 a.m. with Brother Mitchell preaching the sermon. Missions. Oak Grove has always been concerned with missions. From its beginnings, contributions in money and provisions were collected and given to the aged, the infirm, and the unfortunate. Frequently, contributions were made to the building funds of other churches. Baptist or other, white or colored, made no difference. Our building was offered for the use of a Methodist congregation while they rebuilt after a fire. Oak Grove always collected offerings for missions. In the early days, we collected for foreign missions in May, state missions in July, and home missions in November. We contributed for the expense of orphans' homes and pastors' aid, and cooperated in paying expenses of associational delegates to Southern Baptist Convention and to the State Convention. We worked with the association in missionary enterprises. In more recent years, Oak Grove has taken regular contributions for Lottie Moon and Annie Armstrong offerings and for support of Baptist children's homes. Oak Grove has participated in the cooperative program since it came into being 50 years ago. WMU. In the early 1940s, a woman's missionary union was organized. This lasted several years before being discontinued. While it lasted, the members were quite active in numerous mission projects. Some of the members were Julia T. Bridges, Mally Vinson, Mamie Sumner, Mamie Louise Thomas, Marty Thomas, Eldo Hughes, Lola Light, and Urbell T. Francis. In 1955, a committee of Lina Curlin, Leila Lawrence, Mamie Sumner, and May Mize were appointed to try to reorganize the Oak Grove WMU. Mrs. W.C. White of the Cadiz Baptist Church met with the Oak Grove women on Wednesday night, August the 3rd, 1955, and assisted in the organization. Women who have served as WMU director from 1955 to the present are Louise T. Thomas, Laverne Mitchell, Letitia Hughes, Nell Vinson, May Mize, Lily Mae Cunningham, Barbara Litton, Marie Flood, Ann King, and Pauline Crump. The Brotherhood. In 1955, a committee of Hubert Thomas, John Bridges, Eugene Sumner, and Wilfred Lancaster was appointed to consider organizing a brotherhood. They invited brotherhood members from White Sulphur Springs Baptist Church in Caldwell County to come and help organize an Oak Grove Brotherhood. First officers elected in this brotherhood were Alvin Furman, Raymond Sumner, and Ned Davis. Others who have served as brotherhood directors from 1955 to the present are Noble Curlin, Carl Bridges, Tom Vinson, Brother Bob Litton, Carter Mitchell, George King, John R. Flood, Clayton Flood, Douglas H. Thomas, and Cecil Thomas. Youth Week. In the 1950s, Oak Grove began observing Youth Week. 1 week a year, all work and leadership positions in the church, Sunday school, and night service were assumed by the youth. This has been continued, but instead of an Oak Grove youth being speaker, it has become the custom to have a youth team from a college or elsewhere to provide speakers. The first local youth speaker was Alton Mitchell. Philip Connor is the only Oak Grove teenager to serve 3 consecutive years as youth pastor. He served in 1963, 1964, and 1965, and was speaker for both the morning and the evening services. White Bible Ceremony. In the early 1960s, the YWAs and the GAs, with the help of their leaders, who were WMU members, began the policy of presenting all brides of the church with a white Bible in a special ceremony at the church. The white Bible ceremony is quite impressive. The first one was for Dorothy Nell Bridges in May 1961. Many other girls have been so honored. The GA coronation. In the 1960s, much emphasis was placed on encouraging GAs to accomplish the required goals for making their forward steps. Each year, there is a girls' auxiliary coronation, which is a lovely ceremony for honoring the girls who have advanced to maiden, ladies-in-waiting, princess, queen, or queen with scepter. Some girls who have been honored in the GA coronation are Debbie Armstrong, Bonnie Adams, Linda Calhoun, Marcia Gray, Patty King, Jan Lancaster, Harriet Nesbitt, Maria Furman, Janie Sumner, Linda Cunningham, Sue Nesbitt, Paula Crump, Lydia Gray, Torinda Thomas, Rhonda Bruchew, Martha Calhoun, Joy Lancaster, Renee Littlejohn, Diane Thomas, Angela Herndon, Tana Herndon, Debbie Holland, Paulette McGraw, Donda Bruchew, and Deborah Littlejohn. Some leaders have been Ann King, Lily Mae Cunningham, Martha Davis, Louise T. Thomas, Nell Vinson, Barbara Litton, Pauline Crump, Virginia Nesbitt, Merle Downs, and Betty Lancaster. The Little White Church. Oh, I wish we could sing all the old hymns again that together we sang in the long, long ago. In the little white church by the edge of the wood, with each girl sitting there by the side of her bowl. All the fathers and mothers, their faces aglow, oft would sit there and listen with pleasure and pride to the voice so young, clear and fresh, while I tried to keep up with the leader who stood by my side. The good parents of all the musicians of old were not half as delighted or proud, I've no doubt, as were mine when I sat at the old organ there and the tunes I so timidly tried to pick out. Now and then we would choose a familiar old song, and the voices of older ones fairly would ring, when the haven of rest, I am thine, O Lord, and there's a land that is fairer than day, we would sing. When I go to the church where I went long ago, the fresh voices of youth rise and swell everywhere. There's a feeling of pleasure, yet sadness sweeps in. Many voices are gone that I used to hear there. By Martha Thomas Sumner. Dedicated to the Thomas family. We want to dedicate this little poem to the memory of the 8 old Thomas men and their wives, and to their sister and her husband. I met them more than 50 years ago and became their pastor 47 years ago. 18 dear ones from us are gone. They were so kind and good. Why they had to leave us we have not understood. Their faces were bright, their hearts were true. They always had a smile and a welcome for everyone they knew. But now their trials and troubles are all o'er. We know we will meet them on that beautiful shore. Upon a rock God has built their faith. By angels' prayers he gave them breath, and by his love made them divine. But best of all, he made them true friends of mine. The flowers we laid upon their graves have withered and decayed, but the love we have for these dear friends will never, never fade. By John T. Cunningham. The above introduction and poem were published in the Katie's Record by Brother John T. Cunningham in 1937. The 8 old Thomas men referred to were sons of Starkey and Mary Bridges Thomas. They and their wives were William B. and Elizabeth Light Thomas, Stanley and Emily Light Thomas, James J. and Mary Cunningham Thomas, Alfred and Eliza Martin Thomas, Francis M. and Forrest Rogers Thomas, Bluford and Peachy Martin Thomas, Carrie C. and Mary Carter Thomas, Starkey A. and Inez Miller Thomas. Their sister and her husband were Mary Thomas and William T. Armstrong. 13 of these were charter members of Oak Grove Baptist Church. Lula Piercy Alexandra, Vernon Anderson, Virginia Geyer Anderson, William Glenn Armstrong, Mary Armstrong, Samuel Armstrong, Virginia Turner Armstrong, Randall Turner Armstrong, Julia Bridges Bannister, Michael Bauer, Boyce Taylor Brayboy, Martha Terrell Brayboy, Paul Bridges, Myra Flood Bridges, John T. Bridges, Mary Sumner Bridges, John Drew Bridges, Jerry Sumner Bridges, Randall Thomas Bridges, Rhonda Faye Bridges, Carl Trice Bridges, Shelvia Curling Bridges, Richard Bridges, Jesse A. Bridges, T. Edison Bridges, William Bridges, Dorothy Guy Bridges, David Vernon Bridges, Cecilia Bridges, Leanne Bridges, Rhonda Brushew Bentley, Donna Frances Brushew, Janet Ann Brushew, Joseph Calhoun, Tana S. Calhoun, Martha Calhoun, Kelsey Calhoun, Doris Higgins Calhoun, Tracy Calhoun, Michael Calhoun, Harriet Nesbitt Clark, Herman Coleman, Beulah Thomas Coleman, Philip Sumner Connor, Bobby Cook, Leslie Cook, Adrian Cothran, Nadine Cothran, Sam Crawford, Rayburn Crump, Pauline J. Crump, Paula Crump, Rayburn Crump Jr., Hale Crump, Lenora H. Crump, Charlene Cunningham, Mac B. Cunningham, Lily Mae Cunningham, Roger D. Cunningham, Lina H. Curling, Noble Curling, Dale Lancaster Curling, Michael Curling, Patricia Reynolds Curling, A.L. Bill Davis, Carl Gary Ned Davis, Martha Ray Davis, Rayanne Davis, Kenneth Davis, Julius Davis, Mary Holland de Graffenried, Berwick Downs, Merle Ford Downs, Annie Mae Dixon, Timothy Dixon, Donna McKighton Dixon, Dora Atwood Dunning, Amos Flood, Mildred Thomas Flood, Clayton Earl Flood, Hattie Peel Flood, James Clayton Flood, Gilbert Earl Flood, J. Stanley Flood, William R. Flood, Marie McCraw Flood, John R. Flood, Gertrude Hughes Flood, Edna Hughes Flood, Shirley Grissom Foshee, Millard Fowler Jr., Linda Cunningham Fowler, Isabel Thomas Francis, Dale Freeman Jr., Rose Bridges Freeman, Carla Ann Freeman, S. Dale Freeman III, Smith T. Freeman, William Fuller, Loretta Fuller, Lisa Fuller, Mark Fuller, J.W. Futrell, Thomas P. Gentry, Eliza Dale Hughes Gentry, Thomas Hughes Gentry, Nella Thomas Gentry, Marcia Gray, Virginia Brayboy Gray, Lydia Gray, Ronald Gray, Lacey Grissom, Willie Grissom, Mildred Grissom, Henry Geyer, Lois Geyer, Alma Williams Geyer, Lacey E. Geyer, Juanita Stone Geyer, Russell W. Geyer, Vicki Geyer, Pink H. Geyer Jr., Betty G. Geyer, P. Harold Geyer III, Faye Geyer, Kay Geyer, John Hall, Paula Oakley Hall, Janie Sumner Harper, Judy Harless, T.H. Herndon, Helen Knight Herndon, Angela Herndon, Lisa Herndon, Karen Herndon, Melanie Herndon, O.C. Herndon, Pauline Grissom Herndon, Rex Holland, Ethel Holland, Deborah Holland, Richard Hughes, Letitia Hughes, Rita Jo Hughes, Robert Hunter, Ora M. Oakley Hunter, Melanie Hunter, R. Martin Hunter, Barbara Holland, Beulah Fox Jackson, Beverly S. Jackson, Timothy Jackson, Maria Furman Jewell, William Johnson, Lois Johnson, Karen Johnson, Sherry Johnson, George King, Ann Mitchell King, Russell Kyler, Tommy Ladd, Patricia King Ladd, Aubrey Lancaster, Julia Braybar Lancaster, Galen Lancaster, James Lancaster, Betty Gray Lancaster, Joy Lancaster, Davis Lancaster, Samuel Lancaster, Reverend Harold Lassiter, Martha Lassiter, D. Leslie Lassiter, Alan Lawrence Jr., Myra Bridges Lawrence, Glenda Bridges Lawrence, Leila Hughes Lawrence, Gay Wallace Ledford, Malcolm Light, Lois White Light, Clayton Light, Urbell Hughes Light, R. Dale Light, Carolyn Gray Light, Manuel Light, Carolyn Sumner Littlejohn, Renee Littlejohn, Deborah Fay Littlejohn, Beverly Carroll Littlejohn, Wallace Littlejohn, Reed Lofton, George Major, Ann M. Major, Jeffrey Major, Donald McCraw, Paulette McCraw, Carter Mitchell, Cicero Terrell Mitchell, Thomas Mize, Mary Hughes Mize, William F. Mize, Edith Geyer Mize, Virginia B. Nesbitt, Sue Nesbitt, Rhonda Nesbitt, Effie Cunningham Noel, Marshall Noel, Jane Noel, Douglas Noel, Robert Noel, Dorothy Noel, Bruce Oakley, Hilda Oakley, Pauline Oakley, Betty Oakley, Joe Oakley, Jan Lancaster Oakley, Kenneth Oakley, Jackie Oakley, Alan M. Bob Perry, Linda Perry, Mary Julia Thomas Furman, Beverly Bridges Powell, Edward Pridgeon, Yang Pridgeon, Deborah Armstrong Roberts, Prentice Robertson, Ruth Flood Robertson, Kenneth Robertson, J. Stephen Rutland, Marcia Gray Rutland, David Sadler, Michael Sadler, Philip Sadler, Donna Sadler, Jane Geyer Shelton, Tarinda Thomas Shoulder, Lacey Skinner, George Southwick, Brenda Oakley Southwick, Mary Bridges Stalin, Sharon Curlin Stevens, Joanne Sumner Stevenson, E. Raymond Sumner, Mamie Piercy Sumner, Alfred Leroy Sumner, Thomas H. Sumner, Eugene L. Sumner, Frida Bridges Sumner, E. Lewis Sumner, E. Christopher Sumner, Odell Sumner, James W. Sumner, James D. Sumner, Colin Sumner, Kenneth Taylor, Tana Herndon Taylor, Susan Maxwell Taylor, John Alec Thomas, Louise Sumner Thomas, Veda Wallace Thomas, Andrew Thomas, Carol Bridges Thomas, Stephen A. Thomas, Charles Thomas, Dennis Thomas, Homer B. Thomas, Wallace Thomas, Ethelene C. Thomas, Douglas Thomas, Verna Crute Thomas, Murdy Thomas, Matt Sumner Thomas, Charles E. Thomas, Diane Thomas, Alf C. Thomas, Nell Stewart Thomas, Jimmy S. Thomas, Douglas H. Thomas, Louise Thomas Thomas, Richard W. Thomas, Irwin D. Thomas, Ruby Scholler Thomas, James W. Thomas, Pauline Bridges Thomas, James A. Thomas, Roger Thomas, Margaret Allen Thomas, Alan Ward Thomas, Mark Crawford Thomas, Cecil Thomas, Dorothy Clark Thomas, Edward M. Thomas, Susan Thompson, Lily Miles Ulch, Mally Geyer Vinson, Carrie T. Vinson Jr., Nell Petty Vinson, Carrie T. Vinson III, Nathan W. Vinson, Forrest W. Vinson, J. Stanley Vinson, Ben J. Wallington, Felix Wallington, Ruth Wallace, Murdy Wallace, Irene Warner, Margie Thomas Warren, Helen West, Agnes Sumner Wilburn, Murdy Bridges Williams, Jeff Williams, Minnie Williams, Gary W. Williams, Judy Allen Williams, Robert Winkler, Ann Lee Winkler, Teresa Winkler, and Michael Winkler.